So, without any further ado, let's get going and let's welcome to the stage Mr. Ed Gillespie. Thank you, Mr. Gillespie, for being here. You will have 3 minutes for an opening statement. You will then be asked questions by our youth panel. The youth moderator panel of Sophia, and Steven will ask you 8 questions, and you have 3 minutes to respond to each of those questions. Our timers are seated in the front row and have a yellow card when you have 30 seconds left of your time, and then a red card when time is up. And then after all the questions, you will have 3 minutes for a closing statement. So when you're ready, you may begin, and we will start the timer when you start talking. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Margaret, and thank you all for being here today and having me here to share my views about policies that will help improve the lives of all Virginians, but in particular our children, which is clearly a moral responsibility of government to take care of those who most need our care, the most vulnerable, and children clearly are in that category. And I appreciate all that Voices does in terms of being such an effective group to advocate policies to benefit our children, very effective at it. I don't say that just to suck up to my host here today and all the people in the audience, not that I'm above that kind of thing, as the added benefit of being true. And I have policies that I think fit very neatly and comport with the priorities of Voices. And last night, for example, I unveiled my plan for, I call it Striving for Impact, which is the collective impact model as a framework to solve complicated problems here in the Commonwealth. And it's on my website, but it was my 16th detailed policy that I put forward. And in this instance, it is a way for us in the state government to work in a collaborative, cooperative manner with the private sector, with charities, with faith-based organizations, with the creative community, to help make sure that we are helping in terms of providing care for people in addiction in need of recovery, to close the achievement gap in terms of education, to make sure that we're helping those in the adoption and foster care community, and also in the prisoner reentry, are 4 areas where I believe a greater collaboration between our state government and the policies and the private sector and the faith-based community can work in a more collaborative manner to meet the needs and address the concerns and help make sure that our children in Virginia are healthy and happy and safe. And so I look forward to discussing these policies with you here today. I look forward to taking your questions and answering them, and sharing with you my views about how we can indeed get Virginia moving again and growing again and improve the quality of life for all Virginians. If I'm entrusted with the governorship of the Commonwealth we love, I will be a governor for all Virginians, and there's nowhere in the Commonwealth I will not go, because there's no one in the Commonwealth I will not serve. And the policies you'll hear from here tonight, I hope, will reinforce that with you. So thank you very much for letting me have some time.
Thank you. Our first question, we will turn to Sophia Booker.
I am a senior at Virginia Commonwealth University and will graduate this year with a degree in social work. I have been very fortunate to have the support of great mentors and teachers to reach this point, and I've worked really hard to get here. However, the achievement gap between lower income students and their higher income peers, and between white students and students of color, has been a persistent problem in Virginia that has recently worsened. If elected, how would you address the achievement gap in pre-K to 12 education?
So we thank you for that question, and that achievement gap is real and it's measurable. If you go by, for example, the NAEP scores, the national measures for performance here in Virginia, the fact is a 4th grade student in math, a black student, is going to have half of the scores as a white student in 4th grade in math. When it comes to 8th grade reading, an African American student is going to be about 1/3 of the white students' average. And it's not just NAEP scores. We see it in SOL scores and SAT scores as well. And my goal in my education plan, which I bought a number of plans because I want to share these with folks so that they know that I'm not just talking about these things here. They're on my website. They're in specific detailed policy proposals. And in my education plan, which I put forward a couple months ago, I have a stated goal of cutting that achievement gap in half. And we do that over 10 years. I'd like to do it sooner, but I think that's a realistic goal. There's a number of ways we need to do that. As far start with early childhood education, which is very important because we see that students who are entering K through 12 come in at a disadvantage if they're coming from a low-income household versus someone in a higher-income household. One measure noted that a child in a low-income household growing up and being reared in a low-income household will hear 30 million fewer words from the time they're 3 years old, by the time they're 3 years old, than someone in a higher-income household. We need to help get them a better start, and I believe early education programs and a mixed delivery approach, like the General Assembly is considering, is something that I think would be helpful to us. I spent some time here in this area at the E3 school, and they do a great job in terms of early childhood development, and I think we need to have more access for that all across the Commonwealth. And then in the schools themselves, there's a lot we can do. We need to do better in terms of teacher compensation. We are 45th out of 50 states in Virginia. We should do much better in terms of compensating our teachers, and also in having recruiting teachers as part of my plan as well, to have teachers in our schools who more closely reflect the populations of the students they're serving. And I think that would be helpful, and I've heard from folks in different communities that would be a good thing for role models and to help teachers connect with the students. And there's reforms we need to make as well in terms of improving K-12 education. And so, for example, I support opening more public charter schools across the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have 9 across all of our Commonwealth. If you look across our border in North Carolina, they have 167. And so I think having some more options for parents, including public charter schools, would help improve the education quality as well, and to help us close that achievement gap. And I know we can cut it in half over 10 years, and we need to have a specific goal, and we need to have ways to get to it, and we need to measure that progress through transparency.
Thank you. Our second question goes to Morgan Stanley.
When I get sick, I know that I can go to the doctor and most of my bills will be covered by insurance. However, for some low-income children or children with disabilities, that may not always be the case. In Virginia, FAMUS and Medicaid provide health insurance for children in low-income families and children with disabilities. Outreach and enrollment efforts have been so successful that 95% of children in Virginia have health insurance today. However, Congress has considered cuts to Medicaid and is deciding whether to continue funding for the Children's Health Insurance Program, what we call FAMUS. If the federal government cuts payments to the state for these programs, how would you address the health needs of low-income children?
Well, Medicaid and FAMUS in Virginia, clearly we need to provide for this vulnerable population. And the most vulnerable among us in particular, we need to focus the resources on that. I'm confident that working with our congressional delegation, bipartisan support for this, that we could make sure that those federal cuts did not take place. I know Secretary Tom Price, I know leaders in Congress, I know that I can be an effective advocate for us as our governor in ensuring that we don't have cuts to that very important program. But the fact is, no matter what, the federal government and our state government are going to do what we need to do to meet those priorities and to make sure that funding is there. I'm confident that we can do it without cuts from the federal level, working with our congressional delegation. But I would also be not hesitant at all to say here tonight that we will do what we need to do at a federal and state level to make sure that we're meeting those priorities.
Thank you. Our third question goes to Steven Sherman.
In my studies of biology and bioethics, and in my volunteer work with NAMI, I have learned about the impact of substance use disorders on an individual's physical and mental health. When parents have substance use disorders, it affects them and their children. Brain research shows that positive attachment between a parent and child in the first few years of life is critical for the child's healthy brain development. Yet over the past 5 years, the number of children entering foster care due to parental substance use has increased. It now accounts for over a quarter of all children entering foster care. If elected, what policy solutions would you promote to address the needs of the whole family when treating substance use disorders?
Let me start, and I'm doing this on purpose. Don't think this is not a cheat sheet. I want to make sure that folks know that I have put forward these specific plans to address these concerns, and I'm going to refer to them here, but I also want to refer you to them. You can find them on my website, edforvirginia.com, or forallvirginians.com. And so a couple months ago, I unveiled my plan on mental health, addiction, and recovery, an agenda for it. And we have got to address it. I'm going to address the tie-in to the foster care side of it in a moment. But one of the things we have to do is first recognize my first principle of my agenda is this. Addiction is a disease. It is not a moral failing, and we need to address it as such. And we also need to understand that addiction is a family disease. And in terms of the foster care, one of the reasons we see that uptick in children going into foster care is because of, as you pointed out, the family disease nature of it. So a couple of things. One, we need to make sure that children make sure we get to the children before drugs do. And that is increasingly now in the middle school where we need to get there and make sure that children themselves are aware of the risks and the dangers of the disease of addiction, and that we're doing everything we can with teachers and coaches and the communities to make sure that they don't fall into a pattern of addiction and fall prey to that. Obviously, we've got to crack down on drug dealers and enforcement on that side as well. But then the other thing is we need to make sure that we're getting care to people when they need it, when they need addiction and they're ready to get into recovery. When they reach out, there has to be a hand from the state to pull them in and get them into a recovery program, whether it be a medically assisted program or an inpatient or an outpatient. And I put forward, again, the plans for us to do that. So there's two parts of this. One is we need to reduce addiction and address that disease in the Commonwealth. We are at a point now where 4 Virginians on average every day, 4 a day on average, die from heroin and opioid overdose. That is an epidemic, and we've got to address it, and will. The second thing, though, is the foster care system, and to make sure that we are improving it, because we are very, very low, if not last, in terms of permanent placement, permanent residency for foster care children, and we need to do better in that regard. And there are ways we can work together with some of these organizations that I've talked about in terms of the collective impact model. I mentioned adoption and foster care and that. And Virginia Kids Belong is an organization that I've met with. I've met with foster parents. I've talked about this concern. They're an organization I think we could help work with in a collaborative manner at the state government level to make sure that we are getting, we're not having so many foster care children age out of our system, and that we're improving and meeting their needs. I also believe we can be the most adoption-friendly state in the country, and we should be.
Thank you. So for the fourth question, this is Michaela's question, so I'm going to ask that for her. And just let you know by way of background that she is a participant in the Youth for Rise Advocacy Network that is working to disrupt the school-to-prison pipeline and work on juvenile justice reform. So in the most recent school year, over 73,000 Virginia students were suspended. Students of color and students with disabilities were more likely to be suspended. Research shows that students who are suspended are more likely to experience academic failure, have substance use issues and mental health needs, and are more prone to contact with law enforcement and courts. If elected, what will you do to ensure that schools and students are accountable for behavior and ensure that students stay on the path towards graduation?
It's a great question. I've talked to advisors of mine and people that I work with in the General Assembly. My friend Delegate Dickie Bell has been a leader in this area, and I should also note, I just noticed that Delegate John O'Bannon is here, and I want to thank Delegate O'Bannon for his help and his advice in terms of my addiction recovery, mental health, and healthcare policies as well. But Dickie Bell has talked about the need to address this concern. And that number you mentioned, Margaret, 16,000 are elementary school students who are dealing with suspensions. And that tells me that it's easy to suspend an elementary school student, maybe too easy to suspend an elementary school student, and we need to look at the length of those suspensions. But to your point, when an elementary school student, especially if you're in a family where both parents work, where are you going to go and how are you going to be cared for? This is a real concern, and we've got to address this concern. And it's not surprising, obviously, that when a student's suspended for a long period of time, their grades are going to suffer. They're going to fall behind in their studies. You get into a vicious cycle, and we've got to break that cycle. And we also need to make sure that one of the risks that you run is that we're prone to be vulnerable to being recruited into gang activity, into other things that, to your point, result in ultimately finding your way in a path to the criminal justice system. And so I do think it's something we need to address. We need to work with educators and superintendents and teachers and our General Assembly to find a solution. I would make that a priority as governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, because it is a real concern, and it is a legitimate concern, and it's something we've got to address.
Thank you. For our next question, we partnered with Spark Action to host a contest to come up with one of the questions that we would ask at tonight's forum. In essence, we crowdsourced the question. And so folks from around the state weighed in on which question they wanted us to ask. And Sophia is going to ask that question.
I was involved in the foster care system for many years. I'm happy to say that both my twin sister and I were eventually adopted before aging out of foster care. However, many of the children and youth I work with at UMFS Project Life were not as lucky and do not have the backup and support of family. The Commonwealth of Virginia has the highest percentage of youth aging out of the foster care system without permanent family connections in the country. If elected, how would you support youth aging out of foster care?
I kind of touched on this earlier, but I'll touch on it again, because the foster care system, it bothers me when Virginia is last in anything. And for us to be as low as we are in terms of children aging out of the foster care system and failing to get them into permanency is something that we can improve upon. And like I said, I think this is an area where we need to work with faith-based organizations and private sector organizations to come together to make sure that we're getting more permanency and more adoption as well. And that we're also treating these children in the foster care system, and dealing with the trauma and trauma-informed care that they often need to help them live a more fulfilling life and to get permanency as well. And that's going to require not just the state involvement, which it does, but it is going to require, like I say, my Driving for Impact program, working with the private sector and faith-based organizations to improve and increase that number so that children are not aging out of our system the way they are today.
Thank you. The sixth question goes to Morgan.
I'm from Southside Virginia, where 1 in every 4 children is living in poverty. Writing research demonstrates that growing up in poverty can create toxic stress that impacts physical and mental health. However, those experiences can be buffered by positive relationships with parents and caregivers, especially in the early years. What initiatives would you champion to reduce the impact of toxic stress or childhood trauma on young children?
And I've spent a lot of time in Southwest Virginia. There's no doubt the economy there is going through a lot of strain, and the challenges for families there is a difficult one. I was, for example, at the Wise Primary School not long ago, and was excited to learn about the Lunchbox 276 program there, where they make sure that children are able to get food and even have backpacks that they take home over the weekend, so that they're not hungry over the weekend. This is not something that's limited, obviously, to Southwest Virginia, the rural parts of our state. I was also here in Richmond at George Mason Elementary School, which is the elementary school actually former Governor Doug Wilder went to. And there are probably about 3/4 of the students there are free and reduced lunch students. And they have a community and schools program there. We have community and schools programs in a lot of schools across the Commonwealth. But I was there, and I remember it was early April. It was cold and rainy. And while I was meeting with folks and getting this briefing about the community and schools program, a young girl came in, probably 2nd grade, and she had on like a t-shirt and shorts. It was very cold, and I remember just as we were having the meeting, the folks in the community school program were able to get her a sweater and some slacks and to help take care of her. It's hard to focus on your schoolwork if your stomach is growling and your shoes don't fit. And so these programs, the Community and Schools program and the Lunchbox 276 in Southwest Virginia, very important programs, as well as the state programs and the state funding programs. And again, it's an example where we do need to work in a collaborative manner with the private sector and the faith-based groups to help make sure that our children have the care, the clothing, the food that they need to be able to concentrate on their studies, and that removes a lot of that stress. If you're a young child and you're wearing shoes that are 2 sizes too small, incredibly stressful, as I learned in talking to folks at the Community Schools program. And that toxicity that you mentioned, we need to remove that and help those most vulnerable children to make sure that they are able to concentrate on their studies and on their schoolwork.
Thank you. The seventh question goes to Steven.
I try to be a positive support for my friends and peers living with depression, and I've learned a lot in my volunteer experience in NAMI and on our own. Yet my peer support is sometimes not enough. In 2016, Virginia ranked 49th in the nation for the rate of youth with major depression who do not receive any mental health treatment. There are many barriers to quality mental health treatment for children, including type of insurance, place of residence, lack of access, and stigma. What do you view as the most significant barrier to effective mental health care for children and adolescents in Virginia, and how would you propose addressing this barrier?
Again, I'm going to refer you to put this plan out a couple months ago on mental health, addiction, and recovery. And we need to, one, in terms of when it comes to mental health, depression, and other mental health challenges that young people have, we need to remove the stigma of mental health conditions and make clear that there are health conditions, just like physical ailments and physical health conditions and sickness. And one of the things we need to do a better job of, as I call for here in my plan, is to connect mental health and physical health and make it more of a priority. And there's ways we need to do that in terms of inside our own government agencies and departments to better coordinate and tear down silos. I know that's a little bit of an overwrought word in kind of jargony, but we have too many silos in our administration of mental health care in the Commonwealth. And for example, I think we need to allow for the money to follow the patient in mental health, which would help have a continuum of care. I think that will help address the needs of children who are dealing with that. And I do think we need to make clear that if you are dealing with a mental health illness, you're dealing with an illness. And we do need to remove the stigma and encourage people to get help when they need help. And as I would say the same, and have said the same, is true of addiction as well. We need to remove the stigma of addiction, and we need to remove the stigma of mental health, make it easier for children to feel that they're able to come forward and get help.
Thank you. The last question goes to Sophia.
This evening, we raised questions about how state policy decisions can impact children in a variety of ways, from school to healthcare and foster care and to mental health treatment. Children often interact with many systems and require a network of supports as they grow up in order to become successful, productive members of the workforce. Virginia's Children's Cabinet has been established to facilitate collaboration across agencies and at the highest levels of state government. If elected, how would you ensure that state agencies work together to improve outcomes for children?
Okay, so you're going to get tired of this. But this is my education plan, and in the education plan on page 14 is to reestablish the Children's Cabinet, but with greater transparency and accountability. So I support the Children's Cabinet. I think we need it. I do think its meetings should be open to the public and should be open to stakeholders as well, for people to be able to participate in, not just be a government-only program, but that it is a government-run and it is a cuts across the different agencies and departments as it should for children that are dealing with children's care. But we need to have other people at the table. Voices should be at that table as well. And having input and providing thoughts on how we can do things better. Even though it would be the governor's responsibility at the end of the day to make the decisions on policy and funding and things like that, to ensure that that continuum of care and that coordination, tearing down those silos, again using that word. But I think it's a good idea. I would continue it, but I think it can be improved, and greater transparency and more participation from folks with a different perspective than just inside government to be at the table, I think would make it even more effective.
Thank you. Mr. Gillespie, you now have 3 minutes to give us a closing statement.
Well, again, I want to thank you all for being here, for being as involved as you are to care for the most vulnerable in our Commonwealth, our children. They are our future, and it's something I care very much about. That's why I put so much time and thought into the policy. I see we have a few former secretaries of education here.
Ed! Reports confirm that ICE and Trump want to support 10,000 migrants. 10,000 migrants are going to be deported. Families, children, people in schools are going to be deported.
They want to deport all of us, all the migrants. What are you going to